Hey everyone, back here for another weekly tip, and this week I'm going to be talking about professional employer organizations. Professional employer organizations originated sometime in the 1980s to help small and mid-sized businesses really help better administer their HR services. And in recent years, and definitely over the last decade, professional employer organizations have really evolved into much more. So, over the last month or so, I've had the opportunity to talk with Michael Randazzo of Southeast Personal Leasing, and Brent Johnson from Insperity to learn a little bit more about what professional employer organizations do and what kind of services they offer. So today we're going to look at those services and then compare it to a standard workers' compensation setup, which is what many of you are familiar with. So first we need to understand what exactly a professional employer organization is. And with talking with Michael and Brent, I learned that there are really two main types of professional employer organizations that we're going to see. The first one is going to be the standard professional employer organization, in which they would handle your benefits, your payroll, your workers' comp, and your human resources. And the employees would be leased from the professional employer organizations for tax reasons and payroll reasons back to the tree service. The second setup is the a la carte services, or ASO, where you would still carry a standard workers' compensation policy through an insurance agency such as Arborisk, and then you would work with a PEO to have them help with your application statuses, onboarding, training, payroll, benefits, but you still carry your standard workers' comp policy and have the employees still filed under your tree service. The pros to working with professional employer organizations, obviously the first one that's going to stand out, small business owners wear a lot of hats. We all know this. It's very difficult to work on the business rather than in it. So working with a professional employer organization can really help you offload some of that work that you have in the day-to-day operations. Another benefit is HR compliance. The PEOs are really on top of HR compliance, as they should be. And I was talking with Brent, and he said out of the 10,000 employees, I believe it was, they had 900 claims against them for HR-related claims. Especially in today's world where we're seeing more and more lawsuits, HR compliance is key. So that's another thing that the professional employer organizations help with. And lastly, but not least, the group rates. Working with the PEO, leasing your employees from the PEO allows the PEO to bunch together the large groups of employees and get better rates. So therefore, on things like benefits and potentially workers' comp, you're looking at definitely competitive rates on the PEO side. Cons with those rates come flat fees or per employee per month fees from the professional employment organization. So it's important to think about where you're at as a business. Do you have an office manager that could potentially take over some of the services that the PEO is offering, where you can afford to pay that in-house, or do you need to offload that work and pay the fees that the PEOs charge? So important when you're comparing PEO versus your workers' comp, your standard work comp setup, and doing some of the other stuff in-house. Important to really look at not just the rates that the PEO is offering, but also the additional fees that are involved. And then the experience mod. So as you know, you have to have 3 consecutive years of over $4,000 in premium to have the experience mod. I think it maybe used to be $7,500. But to get the experience mod, you have to have 3 consecutive years. So leasing your employees from the PEO could potentially have you end up losing your experience mod. So say you end up growing and you're able to get those services in-house, and you move away from the professional employment organization setup, you may be at risk of losing your workers' comp history, which would eventually put you back in the pool. So that kind of transition is really something to think about if you're looking at moving in or away from a professional employment organization. Obviously, being moved into the assigned risk pool has much higher rates. So be careful with that. It's going to be subject to the NCCI and how they review it, but just something to think about. Besides having to start all over with your loss history and develop another experience mod, working with an individual insurance agency, particularly one that specializes in tree care like Arborisk, would be beneficial because they are going to have access to more workers' comp carriers. So a little bit more variety there, more potential for different rates, different plans, setups, different services offered from the carrier. One way you could set it up is working with an agency on the workers' comp and then partnering with a PEO for the ASO, the a la carte services offering, like I mentioned earlier. And then the other option would be to work directly with a professional employer organization, a PEO, as mentioned. Somebody like Michael with Southeast Personal Leasing, where they have experience working with high risk industries such as the tree care industry, and they're able to help tree services that haven't otherwise been able to get coverage outside of the assigned risk pool, and help them with the full scope of services that PEOs typically offer. So just something to consider. There are a couple different ways that you guys can set this up. If you have any issues or hesitations about HR compliance, about managing your payroll, about workers' comp, about questions about PEOs, feel free to reach out to me and we'll see what is going to be the right fit for your business. Thank you guys for listening today, and I hope you all have a great holiday and Happy New Year. Thanks.